Welcome back, everyone. If you're a UPSC aspirant tuning in, you know how crucial it is to stay on top of current events, right? For mains, for prelims, it's a lot.
Absolutely. And that's what we aim for here in the deep dive, cutting through that noise, giving you what you need.
Exactly. So today we're diving into something really critical for governance, for the rule of law in India.
Yeah, the whole issue of actually enforcing judicial orders, it sounds simple, but,
Yeah.
well, it often isn't.
Right. And our jumping off point comes from a piece in The Hindu. It looked at the National Green Tribunal ban, the one on air horns at night.
That's the one. So our mission today, really, for all you aspirants, is to figure out why some court orders stick, they get implemented while others just fizzle out.
And understanding that is key for UPSC prep, isn't it? It's about the nuts and bolts of governance.
Precisely. The practical challenges. So the NGT order, no air horns between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., seems clear enough.
Yeah, but the Hindu piece notes this apparent, well, lack of enforcement. Traffic police, transport department, pollution boards. It seems like not much happened. So what's the core problem here?
Well, the central issue is exactly that disconnect, the gap between the words on the page, the judicial order, and what actually happens or doesn't happen on the ground.
Okay.
In this air horn case, the lack of action points towards maybe institutional inertia and definitely a lack of coordinated action.
Inertia, like the gears just aren't turning.
Something like that. Or maybe the different agencies involved, police, transport, pollution control, weren't really talking to each other, weren't on the same page about making it happen.
Right, the coordination piece.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the agencies dropping the ball, is it? The Hindu analysis suggested the NGT's order itself might have been part of the problem.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, the idea of administrative realism. Did the NGT fully consider how practical this specific order was to enforce? Well, think about it. Policing a ban only between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. requires constant vigilance, specific nighttime patrols, checking the time. It's resource intensive.
Okay, I see where you're going.
The article floats the idea that maybe, just maybe, a complete ban on air horns might, counterintuitively, have been easier to enforce.
Easier? How so?
Because it's simpler. Hear an air horn. It's illegal, period. No checking the clock. It's a clearer violation for the enforcing officer.
Huh. So the way the order is designed really matters for whether it actually works in practice. It's not just about being legally correct.
Absolutely. It speaks to the need for, let's call it, judicial foresight and strategy. Judges need to think beyond the legal ruling itself and anticipate these enforcement hurdles.
They need to consider the systemic limitations, as the article puts it. Like, what can these agencies realistically do?
Exactly. What's their capacity? What are their other priorities? And crucially, how seriously do the frontline enforcers view this particular violation? If it's seen as, trivial.
Then the motivation to chase it down just isn't there.
Precisely. And that's where the bigger problem lies.
What are the wider consequences when orders aren't enforced? The Hindu touched on this, I believe.
Oh, definitely. And this is vital for UPSC perspectives. Repeated failures erode the justice system's credibility. It weakens governance overall. If court orders can be ignored, what does that say about state authority?
And public trust must take a hit, too.
A big hit. It damages public faith in the judiciary? People start thinking, what's the point of going to court if the decision won't even be implemented?
It's a worrying cycle. Are there examples where things have worked better, maybe internationally?
The Hindu piece actually mentions Kathmandu, Nepal. They apparently had some success tackling noise pollution.
Oh, how did they manage it?
It seems to have been a combination. Stringent enforcement, so actually penalizing violators, but also, and this is key, widespread public awareness campaigns.
Getting the public on board.
Yes, that's synergy, as the article calls it, between the legal stick and getting citizens to cooperate. It suggests it's not just about the law, but also about civic culture.
A potential lesson for India, perhaps. But this problem of enforcement gaps, it's not just about air horns, is it? The Hindu says this is a recurring theme.
Oh, absolutely. This is a systemic issue. The article brings up a major example. The Supreme Court's 2017 ruling in state of Tamil Nadu v. Balu. Remember that one?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Wasn't it about liquor stores near highways?
Exactly. The court banned liquor outlets within 500 meters of national and state highways. The goal was clear. Reduce drunk driving accidents. A very important public safety measure.
Sounds sensible, but the implementation.
That's where it got complicated. The Hindu highlights how some state governments found ways to, shall we say, creatively circumvent the order.
Circumvent, like finding loopholes.
Pretty much. Things like reclassifying stretches of highways as local or urban roads so the 500-meter rule technically didn't apply anymore, or allowing bars to relocate just beyond the 500-meter mark.
So sticking to the letter of the law, but maybe not the spirit.
You could certainly argue that. It really demonstrates a lack of enforcement foresight, perhaps by the court, in not anticipating these workarounds. And it shows how easily loopholes in regulatory mechanisms can be exploited if the will to implement fully isn't there across the board.
It really undermines the original intent. But surely there are legal tools to force compliance.
Yes, and it's important to know these exist. The Hindu mentions Section 38 and Order 21 of the Code of Civil Procedure, the CPC. These provisions give courts the power to execute their own decrees.
So the power is there on paper.
It is. But, as the article points out, just having these legal tools hasn't been sufficient to close that gap consistently.
Why not? If the legal mechanisms exist, what's stopping them from working effectively? What are the deeper issues?
Well, the Hindu points to several structural issues, which are really central to understanding Indian governance. One is jurisdictional confusion.
Like who's actually responsible for enforcing this particular order? Agency A or Agency B?
Exactly. Or maybe their responsibilities overlap, leading to inaction. Then there's the evergreen problem of insufficient resources. Not enough staff, not enough money, not enough equipment to do the job properly.
The capacity issue again.
Right. And the article even briefly touches on sensitive issues like allegations of judicial misconduct, which, can muddy the waters further. The bottom line is, having the authority isn't the same as having the capacity or the consistent political and administrative will to enforce everything.
It's a complex web of challenges. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? The Hindu did mention some success stories.
Yes, absolutely essential to look at those too. Provides balance. A key one is the Common Cause v. Union of India case from 2018, the one dealing with passive euthanasia or living wills.
Ah, yes. Why did that work better, according to the analysis?
The crucial factor seems to be the well-structured framework the Supreme Court laid out. It wasn't just a declaration, it came with specifics.
What kind of specifics?
Detailed medical guidelines on exactly how the process should work, who needed to be involved, the documentation required. Plus, it built in oversight mechanisms and required periodic review protocols.
So very clear instructions and built-in checks and balances.
Precisely. Less ambiguity, a clearer roadmap for doctors, hospitals, and families.
Yeah.
That structure really facilitated implementation.
Makes sense. Clear rules are easier to follow. What was the other success story?
The Taj Trapezium Zone case, a long-running effort to protect the Taj Mahal from pollution.
Great, an environmental protection case.
And the success there, as highlighted by the Hindu, came down to effective interagency collaboration, multiple bodies working together.
How did that work?
Things like setting up a green belt around the Mathura refinery, consistent air quality monitoring, all based on the recommendations of the Varadharan Committee. It showed that when different agencies coordinate and follow expert advice, you can achieve complex environmental goals.
So, if we pull back and look at these successes, the passive euthanasia case, the Taj zone, what are the common threads the Hindu identifies?
Two things really stand out in the analysis. First, precise directives from the court. Clear, actionable instructions, not vague statements.
Yeah, precision matters.
And second, continuous oversight. The courts, or designated bodies, didn't just issue the order and walk away. They stayed involved, monitored progress, ensured accountability. That follow-through seems critical.
Precision and follow-through. Got it. So knowing the problems and seeing what works. What's the path forward? How do we strengthen enforcement overall? The Hindu suggests a multi-pronged strategy, I believe.
That's right. No single magic bullet. First up is a really interesting structural recommendation, having designated enforcement officers in government departments.
Dedicated people whose job it is to see court orders through.
Essentially, yes. Someone clearly responsible for execution, for tracking compliance, maybe through audits, and importantly, who faces accountability if things don't happen. It pins responsibility somewhere specific.
Moves it from a vague, the department should do it, to this person needs to ensure it's done.
Exactly. Creates ownership. The second prong is about leveraging technology.
Using digital tools.
Yes. Think about digital tools for tracking implementation, maybe dashboards showing the status of court orders, real-time monitoring where feasible, digital audits, automated reporting.
Making the whole process more transparent and efficient. Harder to just ignore an order.
That's the idea. Increase efficiency, increase transparency, making action more visible.
Okay, so designated officers using tech. What else?
A balanced approach to motivation, both punitive and positive reinforcement strategies.
Meaning?
Penalties for non-compliance, yes, that's necessary.
Yeah.
But also finding ways to offer incentives for effective implementation. Maybe a public recognition for departments or officials who do a great job enforcing difficult orders. Fostering a positive culture of accountability.
The carrot and the stick approach.
Something like that. Encouraging compliance, not just punishing failure. And the final element ties back to the Kathmandu example.
Public engagement.
Yes. The crucial role of public engagement and awareness campaigns. Getting the public to understand why an order exists, what it requires, and encouraging voluntary compliance where possible. Aligning societal behavior with legal expectations.
Because enforcement is easier when most people are already on board.
Absolutely. It reduces the burden on the state significantly.
Okay, so bringing this all together for our UPSC aspirants listening in, the main takeaway from the Hindu's analysis seems to be that effective judicial action isn't just about the judgment itself. You need that robust enforcement framework.
Definitely. A framework built on accountability, knowing who's responsible, built on coordination between agencies, and increasingly built on smart use of technology.
And judicial decisions need to be practical, implementable, considering the real-world constraints and capacities of the agencies involved.
That administrative realism we talked about, it's crucial. Ignoring it just leads to these enforcement gaps.
So transparency, public engagement, real accountability, these are key for a justice system that actually makes a difference.
Which leaves a final thought, perhaps, for you aspirants to ponder. Given all this, the challenges, the successes, the potential solutions, what specific enforcement reforms do you think are most vital for India to really improve governance and strengthen the rule of law?
And maybe think about how these enforcement issues might pop up in other policy areas you're studying for the exams. It's a theme that cuts across many domains.
A really critical theme.
Indeed. Well, we hope this deep dive, based on the analysis in the Hindu, has given you some valuable food for thought for both mains and prelims. If you found it useful, please do like, subscribe to the deep dive, and feel free to drop any questions or comments below.
We always appreciate the engagement.
Absolutely. Thanks again for tuning in. Keep up the hard work, keep thinking critically, and keep preparing with the deep dive.